In December of 1943, a German fighter pilot made an extraordinary choice, sparing a crippled American bomber as it flew over Germany. 10 American airmen survived that day, their lives preserved by his act of mercy. Both pilots returned home afterward, and for decades, neither spoke of the astonishing encounter. For 43 long years, Charlie Brown, the American pilot, was haunted by a single, profound question. Who was he? Who was the German pilot who had looked him directly in the eyes and chosen compassion over destruction, risking his own life and execution to save strangers? In 1986, Charlie Brown finally began his relentless search. For arduous years followed, filled with countless dead ends, hundreds of letters, and innumerable phone calls. Then, in January 1990, a letter arrived from Canada. It contained just 4 simple words: "I was the one." This is the remarkable story of how 2 wartime enemies transcended the conflict to become brothers. Charlie Brown and his crew miraculously made it back to England on December 20th, 1943. Their bomber, Ye Old Pub, crash-landed at RAF Seething with 11 wounded men aboard, one of whom was already deceased. The aircraft was so utterly ravaged that it never flew again. Ground crews could scarcely believe it had managed to stay airborne at all. During his debriefing, Charlie recounted the unbelievable sequence of events to his commanding officers. A German fighter plane had escorted them to safety. The military's reaction was immediate and unequivocal. "Never speak of this again. Don't tell the crew. Don't tell other pilots." The fear was that if word spread of German pilots showing mercy, it could foster a dangerous sentiment among Allied airmen. The official stance was stark and clear. You can't be human and fly in a German cockpit. So Charlie remained silent. He completed his combat tour, flew many more missions, and eventually returned home to West Virginia. He pursued higher education, rejoined the Air Force in 1949, and served until 1965. His career then led him to become a State Department Foreign Service officer, taking him on trips to Laos and Vietnam. After retiring in 1972, he moved to Miami, embarking on a new path as an inventor. He built a fulfilling life and raised a family, yet he never truly forgot that fateful day. His daughter would later recall her father's recurring nightmares, remembering him waking in a cold sweat periodically. The war, it seemed, never truly left him, and beneath the layers of PTSD and combat memories always lay one haunting, indelible image: the German pilot in the Bf 109, flying protectively alongside their damaged bomber. Franz Stigler, the German pilot, also maintained his silence. After escorting the B-17 to safety, he landed near Bremen and reported nothing of his actions to his commanding officers. What he had done was a capital offense in Nazi Germany, punishable by court-martial and execution. Deliberately allowing 10 American airmen to escape certain death would have undoubtedly led him to a firing squad. Thus, Franz meticulously kept his secret throughout the remainder of the war. He survived Germany's eventual collapse, the ensuing chaos of defeat, and the subsequent occupation. In 1953, he immigrated to Canada, married, and built a successful business career. He, too, forged a new life and earnestly tried to move on. Yet, the memory of that December day in 1943 remained vividly etched in his mind. The B-17, riddled with massive holes in its fuselage, the wounded, desperate crew struggling for survival, and the young American pilot who had looked back at him through the cockpit window. Franz would later admit that after that day, he lost his appetite for the Knight's Cross, a reference to the Knight's Cross, a high German military decoration. He ceased aggressively pursuing victory claims. The sight of that shattered bomber and its dying crew had irrevocably changed something profound within him. Both men carried the weight of that memory in profound silence for decades. An extraordinary encounter, lasting perhaps no more than 10 minutes, had permanently marked them both. The year was 1986. In Boston, a combat pilot reunion, aptly named Gathering of the Eagles, was underway. Charlie Brown, now 64 years old, was a retired Air Force colonel living in Miami. Boeing had invited veteran fighter pilots to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the B-17's first flight in 1935. During the event, someone innocently asked Charlie if he had any particularly memorable missions during World War II. After a moment of contemplation, he began to tell his incredible story. The crippled bomber, the German fighter that inexplicably appeared on their wing, the silent escort to safety, and the final, respectful salute. Afterward, a crowd gathered around him, brimming with questions. How had he never attempted to find this pilot? Who was he? Had he even survived the war? Charlie suddenly realized that he had carried this unanswered question for 43 years without ever seriously endeavoring to find its resolution. He made a firm decision. I need to find him. He initiated his search through official channels, contacting the U.S. Air Force and writing to the West German Air Force archives. He also requested records from the Army Air Force's Historical Office. Surely, he reasoned, someone somewhere must possess documentation of German pilots stationed near Bremen in December 1943. Months turned into a year, then 2, 3, and eventually 4. The records proved elusive, non-existent, incomplete, lost, or classified. He encountered dead end after dead end. The German military archives had been scattered across a divided Germany, and the Luftwaffe's detailed records were either destroyed during the war or captured by the Soviets. Locating one specific pilot from one specific day in 1943 seemed almost impossible. Yet, Charlie could not let it go. His nightmares persisted, waking him in cold sweats, filled with memories of the flak, the enemy fighters, the dying crew, and always the burning question, who was that German pilot? In 1989, Charlie decided to try a different approach, a more personal appeal. He wrote a detailed account of the incident and submitted it to a newsletter circulated among combat pilots, both American and German veterans. His letter meticulously described the date, the precise location, the extraordinary circumstances, the distinctive markings of the Bf 109, every detail he could recall. He included one particularly specific and humanizing detail. The German pilot had looked directly at him and then offered a salute before breaking away. Charlie sent the letter and waited. He was 67 years old now. More than 46 years had elapsed since that day over Germany. The German pilot might well be dead. Perhaps he hadn't survived the war, or he might have passed away in the decades since. But Charlie knew he had to try. Meanwhile, in Vancouver, Canada, Franz Stigler was 74 years old. He, too, had attended Boeing's 50th anniversary event in 1986, notably as the only German pilot present. A local TV station had interviewed him there, and he had recounted his story, the B-17 he had spared, the momentous decision he had made, and the immense risk he had taken. Franz had also been quietly making his own inquiries over the years, desperate to know if the bomber had made it back, if the crew had survived. He had contacted old Luftwaffe associations and discreetly asked around at veteran gatherings, but found no answers. Then, in January 1990, Franz spotted Charlie's letter in the Combat Pilot newsletter. He read it with growing disbelief. The date matched perfectly, the location was accurate, and the circumstances precisely aligned with his memory. After 47 long years, Franz finally knew. The B-17 crew had survived. They had made it home. Overwhelmed with emotion, Franz sat down and wrote a letter. He addressed it to Charlie Brown in Miami, Florida, postmarked January 18, 1990. A few days later, Charlie received an envelope from Canada. Inside, he found a letter that began with the 4 words he had longed to hear for decades. I was the one. When Charlie and Franz first spoke on the phone, Franz described his aircraft in intricate detail, providing every specific Charlie needed to confirm this was indeed the German pilot from December 20, 1943. Franz explained that when he had pulled alongside Ye Old Pub and seen the catastrophic extent of the damage, when he had looked through the gaping holes in the fuselage and witnessed the desperate crew struggling to save each other, he had vividly recalled the words of his commanding officer, Gustav Rodel. If I ever see or hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I will shoot you myself. To Franz, The men in that shattered bomber were no different than men hanging helplessly from parachutes. They were vulnerable, no longer a threat. Finishing them off, he believed, would be cold-blooded murder, not an act of combat. Franz told Charlie he had tried to signal them to land in Germany or divert to neutral Sweden, where they would receive medical treatment. But the Americans had continued flying determinedly toward England. So, Franz, driven by an unwavering moral compass, escorted them, protecting them through menacing German flak positions. As they talked, a profound shift occurred within both men. Charlie's decades-long nightmares began to ease. The question that had haunted him for nearly 5 decades finally had an answer, and far more than just an answer. It had a name, a voice, a tangible human being on the other end of the line. For Franz, hearing Charlie's voice meant everything. For 47 years, he had wondered if his choice had truly mattered, if the bomber had crashed into the North Sea, or if the crew had bled out before reaching England. Now he knew they had lived. All 10 men had survived that mission because of him. The 2 men quickly arranged to meet in person. 6 months later, they reunited in Seattle. A camera captured the profoundly emotional moment. Franz stepped out of a car, saw Charlie, and without hesitation, ran to embrace him. The 2 men, once bitter enemies, held each other tightly and wept openly. Franz then turned to the camera, his voice soft with emotion, and said, "I love you, Charlie." They spent the entire day talking, meticulously filling in the missing years of their lives. Charlie introduced Franz to other surviving members of his crew, men who were alive solely because of Franz's brave choice. That December day, Franz met their children and their grandchildren. He saw the living legacy of families that existed because one pilot had chosen mercy. The meeting proved to be profoundly healing for both men. Charlie confirmed that his nightmares completely stopped after he found Franz. Franz, for his part, declared that meeting Charlie and his crew was the only good thing that came out of World War II for him. He had lost his own brother in the war, witnessed the Luftwaffe lose over 90% of its pilots, and endured the utter destruction of his homeland. But saving these men, that was something he could forever be truly proud of. After 1990, Charlie and Franz became inseparable friends, a bond that transcended their wartime past. They spoke on the phone every single week. They traveled extensively across the United States together, appearing at air shows and veteran gatherings, sharing their extraordinary story with countless civic groups and organizations. During one later visit, Franz presented Charlie with a book. Inside, he had penned a deeply personal inscription. In 1940, I lost my only brother as a night fighter. Thanks, Charlie. Your brother, Franz. Their 2 families also became incredibly close. Charlie's wife and Franz's wife became dear friends. The powerful bond extended far beyond the 2 pilots to everyone around them. Some people, however, simply could not understand. Franz received phone calls from Germany, accusing him of being a traitor for sparing American bombers. Some of his Canadian neighbors even shunned him, unfairly calling him a Nazi. Franz's response was always the same. They would never truly understand. For Franz and Charlie, such labels were meaningless. German or American, enemy or friend. These were merely words from a war that had ended decades ago. What truly mattered was what had transpired on December 20th, 1943, when one man looked at another and made the courageous choice of humanity over duty. Their remarkable friendship endured for 18 years. On March 22, 2008, Franz Stigler passed away in Vancouver, Canada, at the age of 92. Just 8 months later, on November 24, 2008, Charlie Brown died in Miami, Florida, at 86. They are buried thousands of miles apart, yet their incredible story remains inextricably linked. 2 men who met for barely 10 minutes in the heat of combat in 1943 went on to become brothers for the final 18 years of their lives. Their story was eventually chronicled in a book called A Higher Call, meticulously written with the help of authors who documented every detail. The book became a bestseller, introducing their profound narrative to millions who had never heard it before. But the true legacy isn't the book or the fame, or the well-deserved recognition that arrived late in their lives. The real legacy is the timeless lesson Franz Stigler taught the world, that even amidst the horrors of war, humanity can indeed prevail. It teaches us that you can wear the uniform of an enemy and still recognize the inherent human beings on the other side. It took them 47 years to find each other, and they shared 18 years together, only to pass away within 8 months of one another, almost as if neither could exist long without the other. This isn't merely a war story. It is a profound testament to what it truly means to be human.